Hello, and welcome to the Tuning In podcast. I'm Dana Evans, your inner voice and emotional support coach. In this podcast, we explore the deep wisdom that lives in our bodies, emotions, and inner voice. Together, we'll shed the layers that no longer serve us, creating space to tap into the flow of life and experience true ease. So, are you ready to join me? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. Today, we're going to talk about listening to your body and following the flow, even if it doesn't make sense to your mind or if it doesn't make sense with a plan that you tend to carry or an idea of what's right and wrong with your mind. So let's back up a little bit. I went on a little trip a couple weeks ago to visit my brother and sister-in-law. And leading up to the trip, I was feeling pretty good. And I got actually pretty prepared and was ready to travel without too much stress, which is always a good sign for me. And upon arriving on the trip, I quickly realized that I was going to be eating a little bit differently than I normally eat, which is totally fine. I don't really get very stressed about food anymore. But over the course of 5 days, I swear I ate no vegetables. And I wasn't even really thinking about it. I can go in and out with vegetables. In the past, I was hardcore. Like, we used to eat a ton of vegetables. John and I was like really intense about vegetables. But over the years, I've really softened around what that looks like, what that means, what's right, what's wrong, like all the eating stuff. I've done a lot of I don't know if it's work around it, but I've done a lot of softening around food, and I no longer really carry a really intense right or wrong. I definitely have preferences, and certainly when I'm home sourcing my own food, I go for quality as much as possible. I go for local as much as possible. Like, I definitely have things like that. But I've really softened when I'm on trips, and it's really fun to actually witness and see my own transformation of not getting so worked up about things. So on this trip, we really didn't eat vegetables. And I joked about 3 days in, I texted John and I said, basically everything I'm eating is bread wrapped around some sort of cheese or meat. So we had pizza. Oh my gosh, we had the best pizza. We had burritos. We had dumplings and some really amazing Chinese food with like rice and meat. I had a ham and cheese croissant. So you get the theme, right? Continued on, finished the trip, got home. And let me tell you, I said to John, I'm like, oh my God, I got to have some vegetables. Like, I got to eat vegetables again. My mind was saying that because I had spent 5 days not eating vegetables. And in my mind, that is maybe not the best thing. So my mind, upon returning home, felt the need to have more vegetables. But here's the interesting thing. My body didn't. It's not like I was craving them. It was more like I should have them because that's the right and good thing to do. Even though my mind felt that, I didn't have the energy to do anything about it because I returned home late on a Tuesday. Oh my gosh, guys, it was to get from here, Santa Fe, to Reno, which then I drive from Reno. They pick me up and we go to Lake Tahoe where they live. It's 2 1-hour flights. It's really couldn't be easier. And there's no direct flight, so you have to do a layover. And so on my way home, my 2 1-hour flights, my whole trip in total was like 11 hours because we drove almost an hour from Tahoe to Reno. Then I get to the airport, flight's delayed. Get on my flight to Phoenix, flight from Phoenix to Santa Fe is delayed. Finally get on my flight from Phoenix to Santa Fe or to Albuquerque, and then it's an hour from Albuquerque to Santa Fe. So basically 11 hours for 2 single-hour flights. Whatever. It was fine. But that being said, I was very tired on Wednesday. I hadn't slept great when I was on my trip. I didn't sleep great Tuesday night when I got home. And then Wednesday, I was like, oh, the only thing I had energy to do was clean the house because it was feeling very dirty. But I didn't have energy to go to the grocery store or actually run any errands. And so we had to eat what we had. And what we had were some frozen chicken tamales, so good, from a local company, and cheese and sourdough bread. And what I found myself gravitating towards was eating that. And I had tamales with sour cream and cheese for dinner. And then I was craving grilled cheese sandwiches for lunch. So that's what I ate Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then come Saturday, I was okay. That has felt so good. I just ate cheese and bread. I continued the theme and it felt good. And here's the thing I've learned about myself over the years. When it comes to food and cravings, I really deeply trust my body. I really do. I don't really live in the fear anymore that if I eat, grilled cheese for a week, if I'm gonna gain weight, or it's gonna be bad for my cholesterol, or I'm not gonna like the taste of vegetables anymore because I've ruined my palate. Like I don't live in that anymore. I have in the past, but it's just not a concern. And so what I do with eating, especially if I'm coming home for a trip, or especially if I've gone through a really difficult or stressful time, and I know that my body is desiring recalibration, I just go with it, right? If I wanted vegetables, especially with food, if I want something, I am determined and I will get it. Even if I don't have energy, like I will go to the grocery store and get the milk so I can make the mac and cheese. I will find the bread shop and go there at the time so I can have the bread. I will go to the farm so I can get the vegetables I want. I will go to that one grocery store to get the one type of cream, Origin A2 cream, which I love. It's actually from Colorado, but there's only one store they can get it at. So I will go out of my way to get the exact food item I want. So it's not like I couldn't have gotten vegetables last week, but turned out I didn't need them because my body didn't crave them. And what my body does for comfort and to reset and recalibrate with food, there's three. And I always joke if John and I were on the newlywed game, sometimes I ask him questions out of the blue. I'm like, okay, John, question for the newlywed game. Like, what is my comfort food? And then I see if he can guess it. He does not like this game at all, for the record. It's not like to be tested. But I ask him, and then this one I did ask him a little while ago, and he's something with cheese. It's true. So my three comforts that I go to, and again, this is not my mind. This is absolutely a craving that comes up. And it's either a grilled cheese sandwich, nachos, or my famous salad nachos are my favorite thing, or a quesadilla. And what happens is when I crave that, I crave it and I will eat it every single day for a set period of time until it no longer tastes good. So in this case, it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I had grilled cheese for lunch or dinner, and then I had tamales for lunch or dinner, whatever. Like those were the only two things that I ate. And every time that grilled cheese tasted so freaking good. I butter the sourdough bread. I put in two kinds of cheese. A couple days I layered in some sliced dates. And then crisp that up on the pan. It was so good. And so that's what I ate on repeat. I woke up on Saturday and I was like, oh, I'm ready for vegetables. So Saturday I went out and did my freaking errand cycle. I should do a whole episode on my errand cycle. Errands in Santa Fe feel so hard and it's like a 3-hour commitment. Nothing is like in a cohesive location. It's like all these random nooks and crannies, and you have to go down these random streets and these random places. Even though it's a really small town, it is really hard for me to do my errand circuit. But I did it, and I started with the farm. And I got so many delicious vegetables, which suddenly sounded exciting and good. And I came home and then I prepped the vegetables because even though vegetables sounded good, let's be honest, if we don't prep our food, it is so much harder to eat it. I washed the carrots and put them in a bag. I washed the greens and put them in a bag. I made this really delicious kale salad. I got the recipe from Pinch of Yum. I should put that in the show notes. The Pinch of Yum kale salad. And it is so good and it's so versatile. Like I didn't have all the ingredients. I didn't have what I needed, but I just winged it. So I used tahini and peanut oil, and I did shelled pistachios and dried cherries and cucumber, some cilantro and green onions. And I used up a lot of like random things that were in the fridge because I ate no vegetables the week before. And it was such a great thing to make because now, like 4 days later, we're still eating this huge kale salad and it's even more delicious. But I just got all this stuff, prepped all of this food. Then Saturday night, I was too tired to cook and I'm like, I'm going to make a grilled cheese again. And let me tell you, that grilled cheese did not taste as good. And I was like, oh, the craving for grilled cheese is over. And that's the thing, like when you're really able to trust, first of all, and attune to the desires of your body, is that you can ride with your body. It's like you can ride or die with these urges and cravings. And listen, I'm not a big teacher of intuitive eating or food science. I have a background in health coaching and I have a certification in all of that. And I was super into that for a while. But what happened over the years was I really got sick of telling people what to eat. Because to me, at this point in my life, it's more interesting and fun to just see what cravings come up. And I know, isn't that crazy? I know it's in a lot of the food world, it's taboo to eat based on craving. They're like, oh, that means something's wrong here, something's wrong there. Or if you only follow your cravings, you're only going to eat things that are bad, air quotes, bad for you. I know that there's some wisdom to that, but I'm beyond that anymore. It just doesn't, I don't operate that way. And so for me, I like to follow these urges and cravings around food because it's fun. It's interesting. And to me, more than my body signaling there's a problem, it's a way for my body to signal like we're needing something and we see that this food can offer it. And I think there's trust that's been built up over the years in a lot of the food that I give my body is like this really beautiful, high quality as much as I can, really nutrient dense. And so it's not cheap thrills. We're not eating crazy high dopamine foods that stress my system. A lot of the foods are going to be made by me and they're just going to have a different energy. I really believe in the energy that we eat, the energy in which we eat and make our food and consume and think our food translates to how the food lands in our body. I don't have any science for that. That's just how I operate. And that's what I believe and my process for consuming is I'm grateful for whatever I consume, whether it's a grilled cheese or a kale salad or a date or an ice cream sandwich, my coffee, whatever it is, I'm just thank it for giving my body what it needs. And then my body gets to say, I want this. And I get to say, okay, let me give it to you. Versus me saying to my body, no, you're not allowed this. You're bad. You don't know what you want. My mind knows what you want. And my mind knows what you need because this is the diet and the eating philosophy that's right and good and better and elitist. It's really easy to get into that cycle of good and bad in the food world. And I've been there. Trust me, I have been there. And I like to believe I'm not there as often now. But it's like a huge conditioning. And felt that. I felt that move through my body. Anyway, back to the point, Anna. The thing is, when my body needs anchoring, when my body needs some sort of reset, when it needs retreat and like nurturing, it usually will crave one of those three: nachos, quesadilla, or grilled cheese. And I them until I'm done eating them. And then without fail, it won't taste the same. Just like on Saturday, I made a grilled cheese. It looked as beautiful. It was as delicious as the other ones, but it didn't taste as good. It was no longer what I was craving. Simply said. And now it's Tuesday. I haven't had or even wanted a grilled cheese since. Isn't that crazy? So there is this idea that I think is fun to contemplate of if we're craving something, if our bodies are needing something, and we allow them to have it without parameters, it will work it through on its own versus this mind imposed limitation thinking, well, if you want this, then you can only have it until here, or you can only have one grilled cheese, or you can only have a half of a sandwich, or you can have a grilled cheese for one day, but not 2 days. And all of these reels, which I actually think, or excuse me, rules, which I wonder if that actually extends the craving and creates distrust, disharmony between the mind and body, because the mind is like the parent saying to the child, if you're good, you can have this, right? If you're bad, you can't, or I can't trust you to have this. And so I'm going to portion it out. And so you're creating this lack of trust in this dynamic between mind and body, saying mind knows better. I don't think that's true. I do think that we can be conditioned and morphed and disconnected from our bodies, thus not always at the beginning being able to trust what the body's asking for because it's been shut down for so long. So we're like, is that body, is that mind, is mind craving this way? It's very confusing. I get into this when we do one-to-one work because it's like this very complex web that we have to pull apart, because then you have the emotions of I feel bad if I eat this, and then that's going to fuel into the body. And then the mind wants to not be bad. So the mind's like, what's good? So if we ate too much candy and that was bad, then we have to go the other direction and eat salads for a week because salads are good. But inherently our salad's good. Like raw vegetables can be really hard for our system. And sometimes our body needs a different thing, and it's not good or bad. It's not that easy. It's not that simple. It's not that clear. But there is this energy that is underneath all the layers of conditioning and emotion and stress and fear and discomfort around food of there's desire and knowing from within what you need. And if I can zoom out a little bit, thinking of carbs, right? Carbs and fat. So cheese, right, is fat. That's going to be really grounding. Carbs feel really like safe, and they're a way for the body to accumulate. In the winter, we're going to want to eat a lot more carbs because it's cold and we want to insulate our systems. And bread and cheese can be this really beautiful way to insulate and ground our systems when we're feeling disoriented. I was underslept. I'd been traveling, right? I was feeling really and jumpy last week. Oh, I'm still getting over that. And it's my body just needed something to, like a weighted blanket. And that's what the frickin' grilled cheese sandwich did. Isn't it funny that we can take something so simple and that we can write off so often? Like, God, it was so weird. I was craving grilled cheese for a week. There's more to it than that. And that's where we really get into the trusting of the body and building the trust of the body. And the reason I can just eat grilled cheese until I stop wanting them is because I've tested that limit. There's definitely been times when my mind's like, I've had too many grilled cheese sandwiches, or like, you have to stop eating nachos. This is not good for you. But now it's fine. It's fine. It will work itself out. And I am not a parent, and don't quote me on this, but I do think there's some interesting studies around kids. I have this vision, like I see a visual, so I must have watched a video about it, where kids who are like saying you can have the M&Ms if you're good, and they're like given to the kids, versus if M&Ms are just available at all times on the desk. For the kids who have M&Ms available at all times to them, will self-regulate and figure out how many they need and how many is enough, versus the kids who are not given that autonomy. They'll just eat all of the M&Ms and then get sick. Something like that. I'm sure someone knows what I'm talking about. But it makes me think of our animals too. Our cat, and this is not the case with all cats, but I've definitely known a lot of dog owners who feed their dogs just twice a day. And they're like, I can't leave the food out because the dog will eat all the food. I also know a lot of cat owners whose cats just free graze. And Mia gets to free graze on country. So she gets raw food in the morning and night. So that's breakfast and dinner. It's her raw food. We can't leave it out indefinitely because it will spoil. It's literally raw meat. But she has access at all times to crunchies, to kibble that she can snack on and free range. And some people's cats can't do that. Some people's cats can. We raised Mia from the beginning to be able to have that. So whatever it works. But I think about that as humans and kids as well of like, how much are we limiting ourselves and deciding what is right and wrong? And how much does that actually cause more problems and cause more overindulgence and cause us to feel oh, I can only have one grilled cheese. I can only eat grilled cheese one day. So like I'm gonna eat it till I get sick. Or this is a bad food, so I have to sneak it in and I have shame while I'm eating it. And that's my whole system feels shame upon consuming it. And it's, oh, that doesn't feel good. So I think there's a conversation here that can happen within ourselves of, do you trust your body? And are you willing to experiment with urges and surges of what you need and want to be eating versus the mind saying this or that? Now, I think there's a lot of value and it's really helpful for a lot of people to say yes or no. So to say, I don't eat dairy, right? Or don't eat sweets during the week. Like for some people, that's a lot easier. Okay. And I get that. Moderation can be difficult. And I don't even like the word moderation. Like the intuitive eating can feel difficult until you really gotten the dopamine in your mind and your palate and everything in check. It can be really difficult. But as you're building that and as you're building this deeper relationship with your body, you can then take the reins off a little bit and trust and see what is your body's natural stopping point. What are your own natural limits? It's Is it harder a lot of times? Yeah, probably. Is it really hard if you have a lot of old emotional triggers around food and body image? Yeah, definitely. Like we got to work through that on an emotional level to release that so you can access this on your own. But for someone who's gone through that and gotten to the other side, you can be like, wow, it actually feels really lovely to be able to trust my body and to be able to eat the things that I need when I need them and know that I'm always coming back to homeostasis. On Sunday night, we had steak and potatoes and kale salad. And boy, that tasted so good. And it was like, oh, my body's, oh, more protein. Thank you. A little more stable food source. Thank you. Some greens, some fiber. Oh, thank you. It's always going to come back. And so it's like my body's trusting my mind's trusting my body. And there's this beautiful rhythm. And in between, for the 7 to 10 days that I didn't eat vegetables, guess what? I'm okay. I'm alive. I made it. My system didn't fall apart. I didn't gain 20 pounds. And not having a mental story about it is so much lighter and more fun than I've definitely seen it in the past or experienced it too, where it's you're on the other side and you're like, oh God, it was so bad. I can't believe I didn't eat vegetables. And then you have to like over consume vegetables to make up for it. And it's no, we don't need to operate that way. There's a natural rhythm at play. And if you're willing to drop in and play with that and see, you can always start really small. If you've listened to this podcast for a while, I do this with coffee all the time. I'm in a constant on and off relationship with coffee. We are not committed, but we're not committed. And I just go with, and oh, coffee tastes so good right now. I drink coffee and then maybe I overdo it a little bit. And then at some point, coffee doesn't taste good. I'm like, darn it, it was tasting so good and now it doesn't taste good. So what does that mean? I either scale back or switch to something else. And then I want coffee again, and then I have coffee. And it's a very different way of operating. It's not for everyone, for sure. Like, you guys probably think I sound crazy, but it's just fun. I wanted to share this. It's just like a random little episode here, but one small experience of not eating vegetables turned into this bigger thing of, oh, my body has needs, my mind can support them. And for now, that's what we do. And in the fall, there's other things that happen because it's not like when I want to be grounded all winter and fall, all I eat is grilled cheese and nachos. But there's other things that come into play. Like all of a sudden, I'm craving like sweet potatoes and squash with butter, and more like kidney beans and stewed meats. There's so many things that as you get into the energetics of food and how they feel when they hit your system, it shifts the relationship with the food because it's like, it's not like this is good or bad. It's like, what energy is this bringing into my body? And what energy am I approaching this with as I consume it? And when I have a craving, what am I seeking? Am I seeking grounding? Am I seeking abundance? Am I seeking soothing? Am I seeking like something refreshing and light that feels really spritzy and clean? So that becomes a really fun way to approach food from an energetic level because all of these foods, I'm sure as I'm talking, like when you think spritzy and light, like it shows certain foods. I'm seeing like cucumbers and watermelon and mint and like fresh salads and like cold noodles. Oh, yeah, like a rice noodle salad, spring roll in a bowl. Oh my gosh, that's such a delicious food. I love food. I love food. I love recipes. I love cooking. And then when I think of stewed meat or like shredded beef with, oh my gosh, like a shredded beef burrito, you make your own shredded beef. Or like a chili with kidney beans on a homemade biscuit with butter, little sour cream and cheese. Okay, enough of this. We are not doing a cooking show. Anyway, so that is my little story for you about following the flow of food, building trust with your body, and playing with what if my body knows what it needs? And what if I allow it to explore that needs until it gets what it needs and then it doesn't need that anymore? I also was doing other things. I wasn't just eating, but I spent time in the dark room in our house. Our guest room is like dark and cozy. I might turn it into my office. FYI, stay tuned. But I was spending time like kind of hermiting in there. I was doing my somatic exercises. I was working out in the garden. So I did get some raw milk. Oh, so good. And I was making like a decaf chai raw milk. I was having a little bit more matcha, a little bit less caffeine since my nervous system was a little jumpy. God, it was jumpy. So there were other things that I was pairing because I knew the energy of what I was needing. So I could pair practices with food to really get the support that my system was craving, right? We're not just craving food, we're craving the energy that food brings us. And when we can approach that and support ourselves with that from all angles, it's going to feel really grounding all around and supportive and delicious. And then you're not going to keep needing this food to give it to you because you've done it in other ways as well. Okay, as always, thank you for tuning in. We have some fun things coming. We have a new episode cover design. I am doing the edits on my own now. Bear with me. I am doing solo podcast editing. You can still text. There's a link in the show notes that says text. So if you click that when you're on your phone, you can send me a text and you can ask a question. You can ask me to cover a topic. You can follow up and I can address that. How cool is that? And we have some fun things coming up. I've been doing a lot of planning and mapping out of ways to work with me, how we can work together, how you can go deeper in the emotional realm, how you can really reset and free yourself from emotions that are causing anxiety, from deep sadness, from anger, from frustration, how to move that out of your body by grounding the emotions in your body. So I have a lot coming up with that. And the best way to keep in touch is on Instagram at Dana_Evans and by joining the Vitamin D newsletter. And I'll put the link in the show notes to do that as well, because I'll keep you guys updated on the newsletter. Podcast and newsletter is usually where you're going to get like the first information, first opportunity to work with me first dibs, early access, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. So all of that is in the newsletter, which I don't send that often, truthfully. I send it when inspired for the game at this point. So thank you as always for listening, and we'll catch you next week on the Tuning In podcast. Thank you for joining me in another episode of the Tuning In podcast. If you loved this episode, please rate and review it or share it with a friend. If you want to go deeper into the realm of emotions and learn the language of your body, check out my audio course, Emotions Decoded, at alignful.com/audio. As always, you can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans. See you next week.